Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining our live webinar today. I see people coming in from the waiting room. I'm Hayla Alawi, Atmosphere Press's Book Publicity and Events Manager. Thank you so much for joining us today for our free live event, Green Light, the final fixes that make publishers say yes, a talk and Q&A with Megan Sells. In this live event, you're going to receive simple but actionable revision guidance as you take the next step in your journey toward becoming a published author. Megan's going to walk you through how to polish your manuscript, submit it for publication, and very critically, put together a team that will help you get to your book's actual launch day. You're also going to have the opportunity for Megan to answer your own questions during the Q&A portion of the event. So at any time, please do use the Q&A box. It's at the bottom of your screen to send in your questions. You can also check the answered tab in that Q&A box to see answers to questions that have already been posed. We do want to tailor your author experience to you so you can feel proud of your finally published book. So make sure to answer or ask any questions that you want to know answers to. This is what we're all about here at Atmosphere Press. Founded in 2015 by Nick Courtwright, an author and PhD in literature, Atmosphere Press is the only publisher who puts rewarding and meaningful author experiences above all else. We've published more than 1,200 books. Our authors have won dozens of awards, and our books have reached the hands of tens of thousands of readers. You can visit atmospherepress.com to learn more about how you can have a rewarding and meaningful author experience of your own, as well as to submit your manuscript for review. And if you mention this event in the first line of your cover letter, we will expedite the review process for your submission. But before all of that, I am thrilled to introduce our guest speaker. As an acquisitions manager and developmental editor at Atmosphere Press, Megan Sells helps authors navigate hybrid publishing contracts and shape their manuscripts into powerful, polished books ready for publication. They're passionate about storytelling craft and love helping writers deepen their characters and tighten their narratives. They hold an M.F.A. in acting and directing from the University of Missouri, Kansas City, and before joining the publishing world, they spent years developing new plays with theater companies like the Oregon Shakespeare Festival and Kansas City Repertory Theater. That background gives them a uniquely embodied, character-driven approach to editing. Megan has edited over 24 books across genres like speculative fiction, young adult and middle grade, and memoirs. They're also a featured speaker at Writing Day workshops, the Fiction Lab, and other workshops focused on narrative technique. Megan, take it away.
Hi, everyone. I'm Megan Sells. Like Hayla said, I came to this lovely world of books from a career in theater. And so I have been having so much fun sharing how that brings a unique look to things. And I think we're going to get into some of that today with the way that I think about polishing books and getting them ready for that final the submission process. I am going to share my screen. And it is doing it now. It should be popping up for you. Nope. Oh no, Hayla, can you see it?
The presentation isn't coming up, but are you able to? Oh, there we go. There it is.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay, good. I was like, oh no. And so now we'll go to present full screen. All right, everyone, let's get into it. These are the final fixes that make publishers say yes. I've been keeping a running list of these edits to be giving to authors who submit to us. I read so many submissions over the course of a week. Our reading team, we receive thousands of submissions in a month, and I also spend time at writing conferences with other acquisitions editors, other agents, other people who hear books for the very first time, read books for the very first time. And these are the top 5 things that I hear people talk about. So we're going to get into all of that. go to the next one. Here's why you should listen to me. I've been I've been in the acquisitions team for 3 years, but I'm the acquisitions manager here and a developmental editor. I've worked with hundreds of our authors to get their books publication ready. I'm a featured speaker. We just heard that. And then, I've been on the team that's helping books win first prize at the North Street Fiction Book Prize, the I.F.N.I. Book of the Year, International Latino Book of the Year. So we've had some awesome successes here at Atmosphere Press, and I'm excited to share like kind of why. So here it is. It's just these 3 things. We're going to break down into like 5 steps how to achieve these things. But when publishers are reading a book for the first time, they're looking for these things: market readiness. So is the book written for the right audience? If it's a book about vampires killing other vampires and it's marketed towards like 5-year-olds, that's probably not in the best interest of that book. Does it have an exciting premise though? Yes, it does. Vampires killing other vampires, very exciting. And then if I'm reading this book and the vampires are killing the other vampires in a quick plot succession that goes through those beats quickly, then it's market ready. So market readiness is like a big umbrella category. Then we're also looking for technical polish. That means minimal grammatical errors, minimal punctuation errors. You have consistent formatting, and your dialogue is formatted correctly. You're using the right number formatting, so on and so forth. And then your professional presentation. How are you pitching the book to me? I only get a few minutes with each book to see if it's the right one for me. So how are you in your submission to me grabbing my attention? And is how you're pitching the book actually the first few pages of the book that I'm reading? Like, does it match and make sense? We're also making sure that there's no red flags in your submission package. Things like, did you pay attention to the formatting instructions? Things like that. We're going to dive into all of this. The first fix is get your first page clean, tighten that opening hook. A lot of folks, when we start writing, and this is me, when I start writing, I kind of start with that: once upon a time, there was a girl who lived in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and she wanted to have a horse. Like, that is very, excuse me, I'm going to tell you a story here. Instead, I need to start with taking the horse home from the place I bought it, or the moment that I ran into the horse. Start with something action, start with something tense, start with something mysterious. That first page is your first impression. Here at Atmosphere Press, we really want to make sure that your writing is speaking for itself as much as possible. So we actually read the book before we read the submissions, your like cover letter. So that's your first impression. When you get to the bottom of those first few paragraphs, I should have to turn the page to find out how this little nugget of a story ends. If I can get to the end of that first page and feel like, oh, well, that's nice, it's not where it needs to be. So get it exciting and tight. Try to make it as unique as possible. I know that these are very like easier said than done suggestions, but if you've got to focus your energy somewhere, this first fix is definitely the place to do it. The next fix is strengthen the structure of your plot. So I don't necessarily mean like completely change your plot to make it match some cookie cutter plot idea or structure, but each chapter should drive the narrative forward. If you get past that first round, if you get past that first impression, then we're going to be reading the whole book. And so we want to make sure that the promise that you set up in that first page is delivered on in every single chapter. So by the time we get to the end of each chapter, it should be pushing us. We have to read at least the first paragraph of the next chapter. That's what we call an unput downable book. That's what we want. I recommend doing a plot treatment, which is a tool where you write just the very basic bulleted plot points for each chapter. That way you make sure that the arc and the transgressions are all clear. Also, just like bonus, if you do those plot treatments, that's super easy content fodder because you're basically summarizing your book. So it's like two birds, one stone. You can create social media content and make your book clearer all at the same time. So, okay, fix number 3. Sharpen your language, sharpen the way that you are talking as not just dialogue, but your author's voice. So eliminate filler words. Mine are that, eyes, hands, and so I use filler words. We all do as we're writing our first draft. But when we go back and we edit, we need to make sure we're saying what we want to say in as few words as possible. Get rid of the adverbs, get rid of repetitive phrases. Make sure that your character names are consistent. I've done this too, where I start a book and her name is Patricia, and I end a book and her name is Brenda. And whoops, make sure that you go through and catch all of that. One time I had a character who I changed her name 3 different times in one chapter. Oops. So make sure that your character names are consistent, your timelines are consistent, and that your tone is consistent. If you wrote the first half of the book while you were on summer vacation, and you wrote the second half of the book while you were waiting at the dentist's office, the tones of those moments might be different. So make sure that the book you started writing at the beginning matches the book that you ended up writing at the end. And then run a consistency check. So that's using tools like Grammarly or Hemingway Edit. Microsoft has some really great consistency check things where you can look for character name consistency or like character voice consistency. You want to make sure that a character's personality stays the same for the most part over the course of the book. Obviously, they have to change a little bit. Otherwise, why would you be writing about them? But you want to make sure that if they're snarky and sarcastic in the beginning, that they're snarky and sarcastic all the way through. All right. Fix number 4 is typos. I know this is silly and it seems so silly, but if we see typos on that first page, we assume that it hasn't been read or edited or looked at by somebody else. It signals to us that it's just not quite ready. And the reason for that is not because we just love to point out when there's too many letters in that word. It's because if that were to make it to the reader, your reader is going to assume that you didn't make any mistakes. They're going to assume that you did that on purpose. And they're going to be asking the questions, why did this happen? And that sort of thing can undermine trust with a reader. So it's more than just we're being persnickety about grammar. It's a very important relationship builder for you to your reader. It's also why at Atmosphere Press, we are big about making sure our proofreaders are certified, are high quality proofreaders. And it's something that we can offer. It's something that all of our manuscripts go through, but it's also something that we recommend that you do before you get the manuscript to us. As many eyes as possible is going to make the book the best that it can be. And the very, very last fix is to think about how you are presenting yourself to us. What is, let me go ahead and move this. Move that. How are you talking about the book? If you wrote, in my first example, vampires killing other vampires, but you told me that it was like To Kill a Mockingbird, I'm going to be very confused when I get into that book. So make sure you know what your comps are. And then when you're writing about it, that your cover letter is single-spaced, professional. I really want to know that you put some effort into this, that you took the time to write to me about it. Make sure your synopsis is clear, that it itself is compelling, that by the time I get finished with your synopsis, I'm like, okay, we have to finish this book, because what? but also as concise as possible, as few words as you can. Kind of the same note that I gave you for your first page. It's the exact same toolkit for this process. And then make sure that you're reading the publisher's formatting guidelines. Everybody, I promise, everybody gives guidelines on how they want to receive submissions. And there's a lot of reasons for that. None of those rules or none of those requests are arbitrary. And meeting those guidelines, make sure that you get as many roadblocks out of the way as possible between your book and that editor. So if it says that it like we'd like the professional single spaced cover letter, but if they ask for double space, we'll double space. If they ask for 1 page double space and you have to cut your words, you have to cut your words. It is, again, like I said, there's many reasons for it on the internal side. And so it's, none of them are arbitrary, and we really love it when you do that. Moving on to this last little recap here. Tighten your opening hook. If I'm excited and I can forget that I'm at work and I can just become a reader on your first page, ooh, you've got me hooked. I'm like, yes, that one right there. Make sure you understand your story structure and that your chapters all have a clear beginning, middle, and end. Make sure that your language is as concise, clear, and consistent as it can be. Now, I don't want you to lose your voice. You don't have to have perfect grammar. That's not what we need. But I do want it to be consistent, and I want it to be clear. Have a professional proofread. If you spent any money on anything before you submit, this is where I suggest you spend the money. Hire a proofreader, get that package as clear as possible. Have them proofread your cover letter too, which that's the last fix. Make sure your submission package matches the guidelines, is as exciting and clear as possible. So here is, I just want to throw this out as an offer for the people here. I want you to not have to worry about most of the things that I just said. You can email me your manuscript directly to me. And that way and if you mention the green light webinar in the subject line, I'll know that it was that you found me from this. And so, that way you can just skip the slush pile, skip all of the requirements, just email it directly to me. And if you do that within 7 days, I'll give you a free edit of your first page. So I'll go through and I'll make notes on all of the things that I said today, and let you know if it rules or if there are some things that I would suggest changing. So let's get your book to yes. Thank you guys so much for coming today and listening to me nerd out about editing things. What kind of questions do you have?
Awesome. Thank you so much for those insights, Megan. And thank you also for that offer. I will hope that everybody in attendance can take advantage of that. That's free editing support that you can get. Before that, though, yes, let's get into these questions. We do have about 15 minutes for our audience Q&A. So as a reminder, if you've got a question for Megan, just go ahead and type that in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. And we're going to do our best to get to as many as we can. All right, let me pull those up. And Megan, if you want to go ahead and end the screen share, that also works.
Oh, yeah.
So,
totally.
yeah, so this first question is, how much editing help can authors expect to get from Atmosphere? And is there a point where I'll have to, quote unquote, move on, even if I feel like my manuscript needs more editing?
Yes. So how much help can you repeat the first part of that question? It was how much help can they expect from Atmosphere? Yeah.
Yes.
So from Atmosphere Press, you can expect all of the help that you possibly could want. We have services for authors before they're in a publishing contract. So we have editors that are happy to look at your manuscript, get it ready, help you with your query letter. Even like if you don't want to submit to us, you want to submit it to a traditional publisher, we can help you with that. And then once you get into the publishing process, it should be, you just have to be a creative, you just have to be a writer. We're going to give you as much tools as needed to get your book where it needs to be. Is there ever a point where you're going to have to move on when you don't feel like your book is ready? Before you submit it to a publisher, well, I mean, nobody can make you do anything, but sometimes we do have to kill our darlings. That's a phrase that gets thrown around. So if everyone in your life is telling you it's time to submit, I like it, it's ready, let's go, listen to them. If you're hearing from multiple people, oh, maybe you should keep waiting, well, then yeah, maybe keep waiting. Once it's with us, once it's with Atmosphere Press, which is the only process I can really speak for. Once it's with Atmosphere Press, we don't ever move on until we get a stamp of approval from the author. So we never force an author to move on before it's perfect. I know that's not the case with every publisher, but yeah, okay.
Yeah, definitely relying on community input and feedback. Even if the community is you and your editor, I think that's a huge thing to kind of turn to when you're trying to make that decision for your manuscript. This
Yeah.
next question, I write in British English. Is that taken into consideration, considering Atmosphere is a US-based publisher?
So when I see things are in British English, the next thing that I'm looking for is consistency. It doesn't matter to me if it's in British English as long as it's consistent. And there's the clear markers. So we have several authors that are in the UK. Our team is used to working with UK authors, so we can switch back and forth pretty easily.
Absolutely. Another question, this person wants to know, how do I know if I'm writing properly for my target audience?
Good question. The first step to doing that is to read in your target audience. If you're writing a middle grade novel, read middle grade novels that came out this year or last year. If you're writing historical fiction, read historical fiction that came out this year or last year. That is going to help you find those signals of if you're writing in the style that is being read by those readers right now.
Yes, absolutely. Nothing better than that kind of immersion.
Yeah.
This next question is how or can this advice be applied to a book of poetry, or does poetry have its own set of rules?
Poetry, it depends on what kind of poetry and where you're submitting it. So if you are also, I will readily admit that I am not a poetry editor, and so I am telling you what our poetry editors have told me. And that is that there are rules for poetry manuscripts up until it's time to break them. If you've got a very form heavy poetry thing, like you're writing sonnets have rules, and I want your poetry to match those rules. If you're writing free form poetry, then I just need it to grab me. It's very subjective. All of this is pretty subjective. But then the other things are still the same. How is your submission package professional? Is the first poem the best one? Is the first poem the one that I need to read? That is the beginning of this collection. Are you summarizing your collection in an exciting and enticing way? And then formatting again. If they have a request for how to format it, so they have a specific manuscript format or they want it as a PDF versus a Word document, all of that still applies.
Yes, all good to keep in mind. It's the same or it's different, right? But it's good to have those genre considerations in mind.
Yeah.
This, yeah, this next question, is there anything that doesn't need to be perfect before I submit my manuscript, which I can plan to work on with an editor?
Ooh, yeah. So yes, it's not going to be perfect when you submit it for publishing, or else what would the publishing process be for? Some things that don't have to be perfect is you actually don't have to have your ending nailed yet. You have to have your characters nailed. You have to have your premise nailed. If you're writing in nonfiction, you don't have to have your index done yet. You don't have to have all of your formatting done yet. Like you can have your collection of photos, but they don't have to be all interspaced. You can just have those as like separate files. If it's poetry, um, I've known poets that have started a contract with us that didn't even have their full collection ready yet. They had half of a collection, and then they worked with an editor to get the other half ready to go. So at least, again, I can speak for our process with this, is that we're willing to accept manuscripts that aren't fully complete if the idea, the premise is exciting enough and there, and if we enjoy working with the author.
Yes, definitely some good things to keep in mind. Another genre specific question. Do you have any tips for children's picture books?
Children's picture books, yes. So it depends on how you're publishing a children's picture book. If you're publishing traditionally, you need to have your mock-ups pretty much all the way there. They need to be ready to go, illustrations and interior design like ready. And if you don't have an illustrator, it can be pretty challenging to publish a children's book traditionally. If you're going hybrid, so this again would be ours. What we want is a clear idea of who your audience is, which kids are the audience for your book. So as long as we have that clear, and that would be in your cover letter, we can create a lot of ideas from just the text. And then, of course, we have illustrators in-house. We're also happy to work with fully illustrated books already. But when you submit it to me, I'm caring more about the audience that you're writing to, and then I'm reading through your mock-ups or your manuscript to see, is it unique? Is it exciting? Have I read anything like this? For the illustrations, I'm looking for, do they match the text? Do they match what's going on? And then we do have technical requirements and all that, but we get to that later. So just for the submission, it's pretty similar. It needs to grab me.
Absolutely. There's those kind of basic things that are, applicable across genres, but I love that note you made about putting those details specific to your project in the cover letter, because that's so important. That's what the editor is going to use going into your project. So you want to
Yeah,
make sure to put
that's
those
true.
details. Another question, this is another genre specific one, so I want to make sure we touch on this. A fellow writer was told by an agent that the word editor score was too low for her to bother reading it. However, for those of us who are writing fantasy, we're naturally winding up with this due to the sheer number of made up names and places. What
Yeah.
can we do to overcome this? Or is that not something I necessarily have to worry about?
So for an agent, here's my honest opinion about that specific scenario. An editor or an agent that is using the word editor score for speculative fiction is not a super great agent for speculative fiction because of the problem that you just laid out. So I would suggest maybe find a different agent. That would be a red flag for me working with that person. I don't know that I would want to work with them if that was the cursory way that they were like, not good enough. For the way when I read speculative manuscripts, which that for the record, that is my area of expertise, is speculative fiction and fantasy. The things that I'm looking for are you being very like expository on that first page? And if not, which I'm hoping not, like is your language usage consistent? Like how are you capitalizing the fantasy world things and that sort of thing? If it's strictly, you're submitting it to somebody who's gonna use that word editor score, it's like a job interview. You tweak your resume for the job interview, tweak that opening to have as little of those fantasy words as possible to get past that check. Another route that you could go would be like mention that you use magic words in your cover letter. So maybe they'll agree to look past that. I can tell you at Atmosphere Press, we read with our eyeballs every single submission that comes through. And we don't use any like screening tools like that. So that kind of just blows my mind. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely good things to keep in mind for those speculative fiction writers. Another question, this is about timeline. Is there any indicative timeline from the time a manuscript is submitted for review up to the moment it is published? And what are the critical moments or milestones to be aware of in this journey?
Yeah. So this again is very different for every publisher. In traditional publishing, you're looking at multiple years. I mean, it could be 2 years before your book is even read by the acquisitions team. We're talking like up to 5 years. For us, the timeline is about 8 to 10 months from that first acquisitions review to you're holding the book in your hands. Key points along that journey would be the editing process. So this is true for both processes. You're going to meet with your editor. They will prepare edits for you, and then it will be your responsibility to make those edits. In the traditional publishing process, you're forced to make those edits. In our process, it's much more collaborative, and we don't force you to make the edits. We try to get on the same page. If there's an edit that changes the tone, and you don't want to change the tone in that way, the next step is cover art, which is always the best. It's so fun. You get to see the cover art designs in traditional publishing. You basically just get here's your cover, and in hybrid publishing, you'll get to have some input in that. So you'll get to send in examples of cover art that you like, talk to our cover artists about it, and then get to choose from a gallery of options. Then there's the like more internal things. So we do like interior design. So how does the book look on the page? We do that like back cover blurb. So writing the thing that goes on the back jacket. And then we're into the like proofreading rounds, which this is like now we have a book and we're looking for those final things that are like, oh, there's a typo on page 47 or something. And then after that, it's publishing and marketing, which is everyone's favorite part. But yeah, so in traditional publishing, you're probably not going to be getting a lot of marketing support. Most of those authors hire their own publicists. And then in hybrid publishing, it just differs per publisher. I know our team is doing like a lot of public marketing things out there. They're doing social media marketing and Goodreads listings and NetGalley campaigns and award submissions and all that stuff.
Yeah, thank you for laying that out, Megan. This is an interesting question that came in that I think will be helpful to touch on. In what situations do I get my rights back if the contract ends or the publisher stops selling the book?
Yeah, good question. And like should be asking questions about the rights of your book. It is unfortunately going to be different for each contract. And that is something that should be delineated in a contract that you accept. It should be spelled out. I know several authors who sold the rights to their book for about 10 years. And if the book didn't hit certain metrics that were like really pretty low, then the rights would automatically revert back to the author. Most of the time, if you sell the rights to your book, you're not getting them back. For hybrid publishing, at least for us, you keep the rights to the book the whole time. You have 100% of the rights. So there's never a time that you would get the rights back. So yeah, in traditional publishing, if they stop selling your book, sometimes you'll get the rights back depending on your contract negotiation. And that is just different based on how you negotiate your contract. So what your agent says, or if you negotiated it yourself. And then for hybrid publishing, it's lots easier.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Megan.
Mm-hmm.
So I know there are a ton of questions, and we're trying to get to as many as possible here, but we're coming to the end of our live webinar today. But I do want to make sure to touch on one more question. This one is, where can I find an editor for my work in progress?
Oh, good question. There's a lot of places. You can check out places like Fiverr or Upwork. Those are kind of gig or self-contractor type places. And I've seen some really great editors come from those. I also recommend that you look at publishers for editors. I know Atmosphere Press, our editing team is available to be contracted for editing before we start the publishing process. I've worked on several books before they were ours to publish, and we got them like ready to go, and then we did end up publishing most of those because it was fun to work together. But some of them have gone on to live other lives. Also, I'll just say, if you didn't get your question answered and you have my email address, you can just send me an email and I'll answer it that way.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Megan. And just in case anyone has not seen yet, I have put Megan's email address in the chat, so be sure to check that out there. At this time, that is all the questions we have time for on this event. But like Megan said, if you've got a question that wasn't answered, you can check out Atmosphere Press's YouTube channel for previous live sessions with publishing professionals. B, you can check out Atmosphere Press's website for some more information. And C, for the most direct answer to your questions, you can email Megan directly. That being said, thank you so much again to Megan Sells for sharing your experience, your time, your publishing wisdom here. Thank you also to everybody in the audience for joining us and giving us these thoughtful questions. It's really helpful to see what are people thinking about and what do we, want to be able to help writers with. If you are a writer looking for a rewarding and meaningful publishing experience, do check out those links in the chat. I put some to specific pages on Atmosphere's website that I think will be most helpful to you. You can also just visit us at atmospherepress.com whenever you'd like. You can sign up there for our email newsletter, browse our new and forthcoming releases to get a sense of the type of literature we work with. And of course, you can meet the humans behind Atmosphere Press, including people like Megan and myself. Check out our testimonials and, of course, submit your manuscript. Remember also that if you send the first page of your manuscript to Megan in the next 7 days, you're going to receive a free edit of that first page. Just make sure that you put Greenlight Webinar in the subject line so they can flag it for you. We look forward to staying in touch with all of you, and on behalf of Atmosphere Press, have a great rest of your week, everyone.